with the black trumpet jam when everything's all said and done. We shall see. But I'm going to soak these. And this goes against a lot of the conventional sort of quote-unquote mushroom wisdom. Because a lot of people say don't wash your mushrooms, and I think that's total BS, especially when it comes to wild mushrooms. Because mushrooms grow in the dirt. And if you don't wash them, they're going to be really dirty, and you're going to eat a lot of dirt, which is not great. Dirt does not taste good, and it's probably not super good for you to eat in general. I mean, there's an argument that maybe there's some parts that could be good for your microbiome, but I think in general you probably want to cook your food well. And the bigger issue with black trumpets is because they're kind of hollow, all of them are hollow like this, stuff gets stuck in the middle. So I like to kind of go through all my trumpets and open them up. And normally I leave my trumpets in pretty big pieces when I'm, doing a dish, so you get a bigger piece, you kind of get more texture out of it, more flavor. But I'm going to cut them down into smaller pieces for this application because I want the jam to kind of be, maybe spreadable or, just able to incorporate it into things. I'm sort of thinking about this jam a little bit as a sort of a sweet, savory thing that I can add to a dish throughout the week, and tonight I might just put it on some sourdough with some like goat cheese or something like that, because that's sounding kind of good to me. My friend's coming over for dinner, and he baked a loaf of sourdough, so I'm trying to find something that will pair well with that. So I'm just doing a couple soaks of water here, but even when I look down at the bottom, these are not too gritty. Some of the black trumpets I was working with earlier this year were just insanely gritty. So I'm going to do just one last rinse here. And this is the thing that if you do not wash your trumpets, or similarly like your morels, you don't rinse them like this, you could have a very bad time because they can be extremely gritty, and it just ruins the whole, no matter how delicious the dish is, if it's gritty and full of sand, it's just not fun to eat. So this cleaning step is, I think, a pretty big deal. And I'm not at all worried about them being wet, because I'm going to do what's called a dry fry. So I'm going to put them in a pan, cook all the water out of them before I do anything else. And that will ensure that they are not soppy or gross. They're going to get nice and jammy and really cook down well. So that's looking pretty good. Chad's recipe calls for something like 2 cups of black trumpets. I don't know how many that is, but that's probably enough. If I need more, I have a lot more. In fact, this recipe I was hoping would use up a lot of trumpets, and I'm not even sure it's going to use that much. So we shall see. I'm going to chop these up and get them cooking, and if I need more, I'll grab some more. All right, so I'm going to just run my knife through these, kind of mince it down relatively small. And they smell earthy already. Trumpets have quite the aroma. Great. Okay, move my bacon to the side. I think earlier I made some chung, which is sort of taking any fruit and mixing it half and half with sugar. It's a Korean sort of fermentation preservation technique. But I had some citrus, some really beautiful ripe limes that are like orange, but they're limes, so they smell like limes, but they're orange, very sweet. And some beautiful Meyer lemons, and so I just mixed those half and half with sugar, but I can tell there's a little bit of grainy stuff on my board, and I'm like, oh no, I left, grit on my board, but nope, it's just sugar, and I'm making a jam, so getting a little bit of sugar in my black trumpets is not the end of the world. Hopefully it'll just help increase caramelization. I'm also considering possibly adding a small bit of baking soda when I start browning my onions, see if I can enhance those Maillard browning reactions that you get. If you raise the pH with baking soda, your onions will caramelize faster. That is cooking with science. So, but if you put too much, then your onions taste like baking soda, which is not great. So you kind of want just like the tiniest little pinch. But, all right, so that's a pretty good thing of black trumpets. Yeah, let's get cooking. There's a big old board full of trumpets. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and bring it over to this pan, and I'm gonna dump in all these trumpets. That's at least, I think it's like a pound or two of trumpets. You know, I mean they're wet, but it's pretty solid amount of mushroom. And they will cook down a fair bit, but that's, you know, that's a good amount. Sort of, again, wondering if I should add more, because if I'm going to go through the trouble of doing all of this, I might as well cook down more. But this is sort of experimental. I made this jam, or a version of this jam, several years ago, and I haven't had a lot of trumpets past couple of years, so I didn't really have an opportunity where I needed to use up a bunch of trumpets. But I like the idea of this one because I have so many. I need to dry a bunch to shore up my stores, but it's a fun way to sort of preserve them. Chad has another recipe in his book that's like a matsutake and fig jam, and I made that once, and it kept for a long time. It kept for like over 2 years in the fridge. I fed it to a lot of people, and a lot of people really enjoyed it. So, you know, making sort of a vegetable or fruit jam with mushrooms is a very fun, interesting, and cool way to preserve them. So, oh, all right. I'm gonna put my mic over here by the trumpets so you can hear the noise of them cooking. And I'll be back. I'm gonna go make myself a little cup of tea. I've got some pu'er in here, and I bloomed it with a little bit of water, but I'm gonna just pour some hot water in. Okay, so I'm doing this dry fry with no oil or butter in the pan, and you can see the water starting to seep out, and that's good. We want that. I'm going to hit this with some salt, and usually when I cook mushrooms, I salt them like 2 or 3 times through the process, so this recipe calls for 2 tablespoons of salt overall, but I wouldn't add all of it now or at the end. I'm going to add it sort of bit by bit as I cook through, and I'll probably taste, because I'm not actually measuring anything from the recipe. I'm just using the concept, and I'm going to kind of cook by eye and intuition. But part of that is tasting as I go, you know. Ooh, there's a little green leaf. You don't belong in there. I don't want anything green in this jam. I want it to be trumpets and onions and sugar and bacon. Yeah. So in the background here, I'm just cutting up, dicing some onion and some fennel. You guys know what that looks like. You can probably see them. Rather watch the mushrooms cook and see me cut stuff. Oh man, these onions are making my eyes leak. Wow. And the older onions get, the more kind of strong the acid reaction is that makes you tear up when you cut onions. Woo! So these must be some old ass onions. Ooh, wow, I am downright weepy. All right, trumpets, let's give you a little zhuzh. That's looking pretty good, huh? Weird black mushrooms. I'm gonna move you back. No sound, huh? Can anyone hear me? Because I have the mic plugged in. And usually it works just fine. Someone said I'm your favorite YouTuber. Oh, thank you so much. Can you hear me better now? I'm curious. Okay, good. I'm glad you can hear me. Thanks. I think sometimes people come on live streams and will like say something's not working as a way of like trolling the creator. Because like on my end, I don't have feedback to hear what I'm saying. I'm just using a little like lavalier mic. So if something wasn't working, I wouldn't know. But I have done. Oh God, I recorded a whole podcast episode once, and I never unmuted myself. So I had it recorded on like something else, but like the main broadcast was muted. I almost like cried. It was so frustrating to like do a whole, it was like 45-minute episode of me talking and then realize like none of it was recorded because the mic was off. That's just part of life. Okay, so this is all soupy. We want to get all the soup cooked off before I put in the other stuff. I have some beautiful smoky bacon ends from like a local producer. It makes really good high quality bacon. I'm gonna cut that up in little pieces and start rendering it down into the black trumpets. Kind of hard to slice like really fatty, slippery bacon. Gotta be honest. Glad I didn't cut my fingers there. It's kind of hard, but I got greasy fingers. So I'm gonna go clean them off. But trumpets are doing their thing. Glad to hear the sound is working now. Sorry it wasn't working before. Not sure why that happened. Oh, come on, teapot. You are fucking with me. Here's my little cup of pu'er tea. If you're not familiar with pu'er, it's a lacto-fermented black tea. It's pretty good. Now, these are cooking down. I'm going to turn the heat up a little bit, just really push them through that last little bit here. Actually, you know what? I think we can put on our bacon with a little bit of liquid here, because sometimes bacon renders better when there's a little bit of liquid. And this is pretty darn close as it is. There we go. Here's our bacon in there. Ooh, those are big pieces. I'm going to take these pieces out and cut them a little smaller. Come here, bacon. Now, you get cooking down. I need you to render out. I don't want a lot of bacon, I just want enough to give some good flavor and some fat to the jam. So years ago, I did this like bacon making class, and one of the recipes they taught us was a bacon jam, which is basically just a bunch of cooked down onions, sugar, and bacon. So this recipe is very spiritually similar in that it's using Black Trumpet's onion, sugar. So I figured I was like, well, I'll merge the bacon jam concept with the Black Trumpet jam concept. And like, could you make this vegetarian without bacon? Absolutely, but I had good bacon and I wanted to use it, and so that's what I'm doing. Alright, that's looking pretty nice. Okay, the water's cooked out of our Black Trumpets. The bacon is starting to render. That's all good. Chad's recipe calls for butter because he's not using bacon, so I'm going to use some butter and some bacon because ¿por qué no los dos? Why not have both? Butter. You can't go wrong with butter and mushrooms, you know? And this is salted butter, so I'm going to be careful how much more I salt this. I'm going to taste it before I, go too hard with the salt. Mini Mary, to address your question, I can't really talk about that kind of thing on social media. If you want to hear my thoughts on it, I do recommend episode 7 of my podcast, which is here on YouTube. I'm just waiting for this butter to finish melting down. I'm going to dump in a bunch of these onions. Almost there. Yeah, close enough. It's going, that's pretty much a whole onion. So that's good. I'm going to go chop up my half bulb of fennel too. If you don't know fennel, it's a beautiful vegetable. It can get really sweet. When it's fresh, it tastes kind of licoricey anise, which some people don't dig, but I like to slice it thin and marinate for salads, or roast it, or cook it down really well like an onion, and it gets super sweet. Ooh, that's a crispy fennel bulb. Wow, look at that. How's this looking? Let's give this a little stir. Ooh. All right. Yeah, I mean, I'll be adding sugar to make it a jam. It's not gonna be like a true fruit jam, but it's more like a savory compote, maybe? I don't know. So I'm gonna add my fennel here, and I'm gonna let this cook down for a little while and really develop some browning, because I am gonna add some sugar to this, but if I added sugar right now, it would end up burning. So I'm gonna wait for some of the natural plant sugars in the onion and the fennel to caramelize and start turning brown. And then once we're closer to true caramelization, I will go ahead and add my sugar and some cherry vinegar there to finish, and we'll taste for seasoning and figure out what else maybe what we're going to put on this. But to some degree, I think I'm pretty happy just making this jam with the onion, the fennel, the trumpet, the bacon, because I can always take a spoonful of this and like stir it into ricotta or cream cheese and make a tortellini filling. I could brown off some sausage and add a spoonful of this and then build a gravy on top of it. This is sort of a culinary component that I can use however I want. But putting in the time and the effort now to get everything kind of cooked down together will really save time later, and I want to use this. Cheers. Have a sip of tea. There's a little more pu'er. Normally I measure things in the length of time it takes to drink a beer, but these days I just can't drink as much beer as I used to. I mean, I want to, it's just not good for me. It doesn't make me feel good. It also makes me wonder when I look back, like, did beer ever really make me feel that good? The first one feels real good, and then after that, alcohol is tricky. I spent majority of my adult life becoming an expert in how to make alcohol. I have a PhD in winemaking, basically, and like beer and distilled spirits and fermentation science type stuff. But especially in the last few years when it's come out that there's like no safe amount of alcohol and all alcohol is essentially carcinogen, like it doesn't feel great. I'm still enjoy alcohol. I had some wine last night. It's fantastic. My buddy's coming over later. We're gonna drink some homebrew and have some of this homemade sourdough with this jam. But yeah, it's a sort of acutely aware as I get into my late 30s how much even just having a couple glasses of wine last night, I wasn't wasted. I drove home. I was fine. I woke up feeling shitty, and I didn't sleep super well. Maybe I needed more water, I don't know. It's just hard. It's tough getting old. Part of the human condition. Wow, that smells good. Oh, man. Ooh, that caramelized onion in there with the bacon and the trumpets. Ooh. So it just takes a little bit of time, a little bit of patience. Not too much time though, because my friend's coming over and I want to finish this before he gets here. So I'll give this a little bit longer. I'm sort of looking for full opacity, opaqueness. I mean, like the bits of fennel, I probably could have cut them a little smaller, but it was tricky to cut. Just waiting for a little bit more brownness on the fennel and the onion. you know. I'll stuff off my spatula. Ooh, that tastes good. Just gave my finger a lick. So what's interesting to me, see there's about 25 people watching. If I live stream on Instagram, I'll pretty consistently have about 40 to 50 people, sometimes a couple hundred. If I live stream on TikTok, I'll get like 300 or 400 people watching the first like 5 minutes, and then it'll drop down to like 20 people. And here on YouTube, I have about 130 something thousand followers, which is about 1/4 of what I have on Instagram, and about, I don't know, 1/15 of what I have on TikTok. I have an absurd number of followers on TikTok, and barely any of my content gets seen anymore. And it's tricky too, because like YouTube, as of a month ago, I had a video that was blowing up, and I got like, you know, several million views in a day, and now I'm down to like, I don't know, 12,000 views a day or something like that. It's pretty slow. But live streaming is so different from posting content, and it's always so interesting to kind of see how the different platforms prioritize, you know, what you're doing with live streaming. You know, I don't know if I remember to tag this as a cooking live streaming. It might be under education or science, which, I mean, I can still talk about science and education if you want to know something, if you have questions. But I'm also cooking. I'm a multifaceted human being, and I do a lot of stuff, and cooking is one of my favorite things to do with the mushrooms that I forage. So, whoop, sounds like me talking about streaming lost a few of you, so sorry, I'll shut up and just let these cook. I'm going to turn down the temperature a little bit here, because we're getting into the more the dynamic range for when this is going to caramelize. And if I have it too hot, it'll burn. So we're getting pretty close to the point that I'm going to add some sugar and let that start kind of jamming the whole thing. You know, y'all ready to jam? Thanks, I'm glad this looks good to you. Yeah, black trumpets and onions, and I mean, I don't have to add the sugar. I could just take this and put it on pizza, put it in pierogies. You know, there's so many different things you could do with this kind of flavorful mushroom, bacon, onion, fennel base that I've made here. But I am going to add some sugar to it to make it a quote-unquote jam per Chad's recipe that I talked about at the beginning. Yeah, see that nice brownness come along. That's wonderful. It's sort of especially important at this point to stir regularly, because things are getting so close to caramelizing, they can also be close to burning. You know, if I was doing this less on the sweet side, more on the savory side, I could go ahead and add, you know, a clove of garlic and some thyme, and, you know, lay in some more of those herbal flavors and stuff like that. But I'm gonna try to keep it a little bit on the sweet side and use Chad's recipe as my guide here. I think in his recipe, it's something like 2 cups of trumpets, an onion, a bulb of fennel or half a bulb of fennel, like a 1/4 cup of sherry vinegar, 2 tablespoons of teaspoons of salt, and then something like 175 grams of a light brown sugar. And I'm not weighing or measuring anything here, but I'm gonna kind of use those rough proportions as I go through. Yeah, it's sort of like a chutney, you know. I'm going to use the sherry vinegar because that's what Chad, used in his recipe, and like I said, I'm sort of paying tribute to Chad's recipe here. And I think lemon juice is actually like a little too bright for black trumpets. I think it might clash with the earthiness of the trumpets, and it's something like sherry vinegar, which is a little bit rounder. It's a sharper vinegar, but a rounder, sweeter kind of thing than lemon, because sherry vinegar actually has some sotalon in it, which is what's in candy caps and gives them that maple aroma. So I think all of that combined. This is looking pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and crumble in brown sugar here. Again, I probably could and should weigh this, but I'm not going to. I'm just gonna let it all get cooked in there. So here goes in the brown sugar. Starting to melt in. Toss it around a little bit. So I want to be really careful with my heat too, because we don't want to burn our sugar. But we do want it to jam it. I'm going to add one more big cup of sugar there. Now I want to get really like sticky and glossy looking. And this is part of why I wanted to really get everything kind of cooked down, because as soon as the sugar's in there, there's a real chance of this burning. I'm also going to turn the heat down a little bit too. But you see how much stickier and glossier it looks now with the sugar in there? Beautiful. Now it's starting to look like a jam, or it's someone said a chutney. But there's no spices in here, so I would not call this a chutney, even though it is spiritually similar to a chutney. That looks good, huh? Alright, I'll let this go for another minute or two. We'll taste it, figure out if I want a little more sugar, a little more salt, what I'm going to do. I'll do a little taste test here. See what we're like. Yeah, there you go. Oh my god. That's so good. Wow. First of all, it's just sweet, because I put a lot of sugar in there. But there's this really beautiful sort of secondary sweetness that comes out that's not just sugar from the caramelized onion and the fennel, and then just finishes off with the most amazing kind of like savory, sweet deliciousness. I don't know. This is dope. I almost don't want to add the sherry because I like how sweet it is, but I think it would be overwhelmingly sweet if I don't add a little bit of acid to kind of balance it out. So I may not add the full like quarter cup of sherry that the recipe calls for, partially because I don't know if I even have that much sherry vinegar, but I will add some sherry vinegar, and maybe I'll actually add some actual sherry too. So turn the heat up for a hot second just to make sure sherry vinegar cooks off. This is by far, this Don Bruno is the best sherry vinegar in my opinion. At least the best one I've used. So see that like little bit of caramelization happening down there? Just want it to like ever so slightly burn, just the tiniest bit. And then there's some sherry vinegar. And just a touch of actual cream sherry, which is also sweet. There you go. I'm going to just jack the heat up here for a second, bring it all together. Let's turn the heat up because I want to cook the liquid out of this and keep it jammy and glossy, not liquidy. But I added the liquid to bring some balance to the sweetness. So, it all stirred through. And we'll just cook this down on a high heat for another minute or two to finish it off. I might do one last little seasoning salt add too, or I could just add a little more butter. That would also be good. Goodness gracious, that tastes good. Oh, I wish there was smell-o-vision. You guys want to smell this real bad. It's wonderful. Oh man. Yeah, adding that sherry vinegar and the sherry brings sort of a maple component to the smell too, which really enhances the kind of sweet, jammy parts of this. But you can see, you know, the liquid is anywhere it's not touching the mushrooms, it's starting to kind of caramelize, because there is quite a bit of sugar in here that I added. It's making everything really sticky and soft and sweet. But you still have the trumpets and the bacon for that savory thing. So if you dig sweet savory like me, you're gonna love this. It's a really cool thing, and I think I'm gonna pair it with some goat cheese or, you know, some kind of creamy component on some toasted sourdough. Yeah, the sherry vinegar was a really good choice for this. I was thinking about like Banyuls wine vinegar. I've made a chanterelle chutney before with quince and chanterelles, and I think I might have used lemon juice in that one. It was just a little bit brighter, a little bit fruitier. But I also, you know, it was a chutney, so I started with like mustard oil and mustard seed, and there was less sugar in it because, you know, it wasn't a jam, it was a chutney. But, you know, so I've made mushroom gastriques too, where you just kind of cook them down with a bunch of vinegar. I mean, a gastrique, a chutney, and a jam are all sort of on the spectrum of being the same thing, depending on which culinary background you're talking about, but or how you define them. But that is looking pretty freaking good, if I do say so myself. Glossy, sweet, savory, just a little bit sour. Okay. I'm going to cut the heat. Call it a day on this beautiful black trumpet onion bacon fennel jam. Give it a taste. Look at that, it's steaming away. All right. It's hot. I don't want to burn my tongue. Oh my god. I had a little piece of like chewy bacon in there, with all the sweet onion and the fennel, and the earthiness from the trumpet. God, that's exceptional. Wow, I want to do so many things with this. Huh. What a fun recipe. Well, highly recommend making black trumpet bacon onion fennel jam if you get a chance. This recipe is loosely adapted from Chef Chad Hyatt's The Mushroom Hunter's Kitchen. And if you want to I don't know if you can even buy that book on Amazon anymore. But if you see Chad doing a cooking demo, you can always get one from him in person. He's around the Bay Area a lot. This is phenomenal. I cannot tell you how good this tastes or how good it smells. So you're just going to have to use your imagination or trust me. But thank you so much for hanging out, watching me make this. Hope everyone has a fantastic Saturday and a wonderful weekend. So sending you all much love. See you later. If you want to learn more from me, you can check out my podcast. Check out my Instagram, my TikTok, my Patreon, so you can support me. I also have merch on my website. If you want recipes, me to write up recipes for you, that's what my Patreon's for. So anyhow, or just, watch my content, interact with my stuff. I'll see you guys later. Have a good one. Thanks again. Look at that jam. Oh my God, yes. Bye.